The Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing.
Hey everyone, we are the Unconventional Therapists, and this is your guide to nothing, where every week we take a topic, theme, or thing, overanalyze it, and make it all make sense in the scheme of life, living, and mental health. I am your co-host, Dave, and I am joined here with Grigory, my
Smart.
other co-host.
Smart. I mean, I don't know if that was enough foreshadowing for everyone to know what we're talking about.
Everyone knows now.
Oh, now they do?
That I said Grigory.
So I don't know. For me, we're talking about a figure in history who is the catalyst to my interest in all things sort of supernatural, historical, and strange. Like I had this 8th grade, it was either 7th or 8th grade teacher, and he was the kind of guy that sat on the front of his desk and he was like, "Look, guys, I'm gonna level with you. You know, history is cool." Like I can just picture him be like, he had a mustache. Maybe that's where like this all comes from, but I was fascinated when he told the story about a peasant who became a mystic and eventually maybe the most influential man in Russia. And what was most important about this, besides even the story, is the image he produced and showed us this picture of this gruff, bearded man with these piercing eyes. And of course, Dave, I know that you haven't been enjoying your deep dive into Russian history, but we're talking about the Mad Monk here. Rasputin.
It's not so much that I haven't enjoyed the deep dive into Russian history. I didn't really know much about Rasputin. I obviously knew the name. I've seen pictures. I guess I've heard some things about him. I personally just didn't find his story to be overly gripping.
Well, let me, before you make everyone shut off the episode right now.
You're going to really have to sell this, Greg.
I think my enthusiasm for Rasputin is going to sell this.
Well, I mean, it didn't work in my case.
No,
you talked him up for months, and I think maybe part of the problem.
He's got me bewitched. Maybe I oversold him.
You probably, when you're excited about something, you can't do that flaw that everybody does, where they like, "Oh, wait till you see this, wait till you see this." And in your head, you're like, "I'm going to hate it. I know I'm going to hate it." And then you like convince yourself to hate it no matter what.
And you're like, is this what he was talking about? He had crazy eyes. But listen, no, it goes beyond that. But I think before we start talking even about Rasputin, we have to talk about the state of Russia and the czars. You know, these are, Dave, you have to admit, like this time in history pre-World War I is very interesting. It's like this clash of antiquated old world ways with like machine guns and new things and technology. It's all like this old world, new world just clashing into each other. And I think this part of history is awesome. And when you talk about Russia, now Russia is one of those countries that is still very much in the old world. And Russia historically has been very strong. The monarchy has been very strong. But when Nicholas's father dies, he is made the Tsar, which is essentially the emperor. And he's kind of seen as very weak. And he's in love with a German princess named Alexandra. And this is almost like Romeo and Juliet, because Russia and Germany aren't exactly friends at this time, and it's going to get worse. But this is just pre-World War I. They're not at war with each other, but it's not a marriage that's going to bring anything to Russia. So he's marrying for love, which is I don't know, irresponsible as a monarch. What do you think about that? Like
isn't it kind of like I don't know if this is too like topic, but like, is it Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, right?
It's
and then
kind of exactly like that,
breaking away from their, you know, the royal family, you know, kind of getting away from tradition and doing things more for himself.
It's like that. It's like Romeo and Juliet, where it's, you know, these families are not getting along at all, but let's go ahead and start dating and maybe that'll heal everything. No, it's idealistic. It's nice. It's romantic, but it's not realistic. So he's seen as weak. She's kind of well liked where she comes from, but he becomes like a very dominated by her. She he does anything she says. But they will have 5 children: Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and the famous Anastasia. They finally, so the country's kind of like, why they have 4 girls that we need an heir here, and they have Alexei. And this was great for the Russian people because they needed to have a male heir. But what the royal family couldn't tell anyone was he was essentially made out of popsicle sticks and super weak, hemophiliac. They couldn't tell anyone that because he was going to be the heir and they needed the strength. That's kind of sets the scene for the turmoil in the house with the sick kid and the warring countries essentially in the.
What was their understanding of hemophilia at that time?
That's a good question. I don't even know if they were calling it hemophilia, but I think that they just knew that if he scraped his knee, he's going to pass away. I think that he bruised easily, he was very internal bleeding was, I think, the main concern.
Based on one of the stories that we're going to tell later about Rasputin, I have a feeling that it was a thing that they just didn't understand how to treat properly, but they knew it needed to be treated. They didn't understand the function of it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I'm already catching on to the vibe that you're going to be of the group that says Rasputin had no magical powers whatsoever.
Well, I wasn't going to get to that yet, but yeah.
Okay, so we can start the story of Rasputin. He was born 1869, small Siberian village, which I don't even think I'm going to try. I'll try. Pokrovskoy.
Horrible.
Not good. That can't
put your head down in shame.
I know. That's not it. Pokrovskoy? I mean, I'm not Russian.
That was better. Okay. You gotta say it faster.
Let it flow. Yeah.
When you say poke, robe, stoy, that's not it.
No, because I wrote down on a little piece of paper beside me, it all separated the way I wanted to say it, and it just didn't work out. So we'll just say Siberia, small village in Siberia. That's enough said. So that's a tough upbringing.
Yeah.
1877.
It's to a peasant family. So I mean, right off the bat, kind of starting off with not much, right?
I mean, nothing really. 1877. He's 8 years old. Brother dies. He goes into a deep depression. Becomes pretty troubled. Starts getting into trouble. Stealing horses. Blasphemy. Drinking. But he's
now. But here's the thing, though. We did this before. I forget which story it was. We had a story. You were telling me the story, and I was like, but all of it is not. We're not sure what's even true about this history.
I know. So I just want you to suspend that notion. And this is our best possible hypothesis of what he was going to do.
I was researching one source. I heard that he was an alcoholic at the age of 7.
Yeah.
You listen to another source and you don't hear that. One thing I did hear, did you hear about when he was a teenager and the couple of days he spent in jail?
No.
And this is actually verified. This was in documents by someone who actually traveled to his town that he grew up in to research more about him. And I guess he cussed out whatever the town's mayoral figure would be, the head of the town. He cussed out that figure as a teenager and spent 2 days in jail for doing so.
Look, the guy's a legend, though. I mean, this kind of stuff is going to follow him.
And I think the only reason why that's important is it kind of shows a little bit of going against the grain, a little bit of rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Just even as a teenager, kind of being able to stand up and
there's a duality about him his entire life. He's always going to be kind of rough around the edges, going against the social norms of society, into sex, into drinking, into all these things. But he's also going to have some kind of charisma and spirituality that is inexplicable. There's something about him. People will, even at a young age, even right after his brother dies, he's 9-10 years old, people are saying that he has healing powers and he seems to be able to read minds, which is, intense. As he gets older, he's going to have, eventually he would have 7 children, but I think only 3 make it to adulthood.
Okay.
But he decides to leave his pregnant wife and their infant son to go on a spiritual pilgrimage. That's one side of it. Or the reality could be he is in trouble again. He has stolen horses. He's had some sexual escapades with the men's wives in the village, and he's kind of getting pushed out. So he does go on a pilgrimage, and he makes it to St. Nicholas Monastery, which, as we talked about, St. Nicholas is a very popular figure in Russia, Santa Claus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So there he meets a mystic named Macquarie, and he decides to take on trying to live this monastic monk lifestyle, but he decides that this isn't for him. He says that the monks act too much like homosexuals. I mean, that's a quote from him. I mean, however that translates in Russia, but you can imagine.
One of the things that kind of led him to taking those pilgrimages, even though he had a wife and his children, he had a holy vision, reportedly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So he saw the Virgin Mary over him, which kind of led him on this path of like trying to seek out enlightenment.
Yeah.
So he would take the pilgrimages for long periods of time. Like there was numerous pilgrimages.
Yes.
And it sounds like this wasn't specific to him though. This was a thing that some people would try to do. So like there's like a style of person in Russia that would do this and just kind of roam.
Oh, absolutely. Especially from Siberia, because you got to be like, listen, anywhere is better than here, right? You're basically in the coldest, most desolate climate in Russia, the outskirts of Russia, which is one of the most poorest countries in the world at this time. And every time he goes on one of these things, though, he returns, he's disheveled, he's got food in his beard all the time. And every time he comes back to his village, he's more and more unpopular because, yes, he's very religious and he's devout and he's a vegan or vegetarian, whatever you want to say. Now he's doing all these things, but he's also rumored to be part of this Klisti. Have you read this? And it's like a cult who believed sinning intensely was the best way to get close to God. And so Rasputin's like, okay, this is beautiful. I can get into this. And they're into self-flagellation and sex orgies. I don't know if there's other kinds of orgies, sure, but that's part of their religion. So this makes him sort of unpopular in his town because he does have this insatiable sexual appetite that's been he's developing a reputation for, and it's following him around a little bit. So after these pilgrimages, he's making all these connections in these monasteries, and he starts to make an impression on Russian Orthodoxy leadership. He's got charisma. He's got something unexplained about him, and he makes friends with this bishop, Theophan. And this bishop is connected to, so like LA almost, right? Like St. Petersburg, the royal family. He makes contact with these people called the Black Princesses, otherwise known as the Crows. Well, they're just two members of the royal family, and they're calling them the Black Princesses because of the way they look. Like their hair is black, their eyes are black, but they are also into the dark arts and seances and spells. And so they're very interested and intrigued by Rasputin because he just gives off that vibe, right? And someone else who's interested in that kind of, this is around the time of the spiritualism movement, and maybe we could talk about that at some point, but Alexandra, the Tsar's wife, is very into this stuff too. So this is where, people are starting to hear of him. And with the help of these Black princesses, he makes his way to court and makes an impression on the Tsar and Alexandra. And the little one, Alexei, happens to be going through a spell. Like he fell off his horse. He's really sick. And Rasputin makes the call, which is sort of 50-50. I'll give you that. And he says, quote, "The little one will not die."
See, you're telling a very quick version of this story.
Yes.
For this whole thing to transpire, a lot has to happen. So she actually has to send a telegram. However, they would send a telegram because he's not there at the time of this little boy needing medical help or needing assistance. So that however many days it takes for the telegram to get to him, however many days it takes for him to send his reply, and his response is to not, just to chill out, everybody, to leave him be. He'll be fine. At some point, he's a hemophiliac. Like at some point, he's gonna be fine. Like
Mhm.
the more they mess with him, probably the worse they would make it. Actually, like
Right. So I think so you're right. You're right in that he wasn't always there, but sometimes he was. And I think that you're right also when you say that it would kind of like Rasputin's thing would be like, keep the doctors away from him. He'll be all right. And the things that the doctors were probably giving him were aspirin, and that's going to thin his blood and make it even worse. So the doctors stepping away from him, it seems like Rasputin's doing the trick. But I mean, obviously, there's other reasons. But I think that in the same way that someone may be having an epileptic seizure at the time, and they take that person to a church and say this is possessed by demons, and the priest says a little prayer, and by the time the seizure's done, the person's good. It's true to the people around them, right? The people who witness that's true. So the same thing, if you're a mother, if you're Alexandra and you're the Tsar, and you see this holy man, this man of God who is different than anything you've ever seen. He's a peasant, so he's kind of, he's got that thing going for him too, where he's different from everyone. He's kind of gross. He's got like food in his beard. He's intense. He's got these mesmerizing eyes, and he is so confident that he can heal this child. As parents, they're kind of like, all right, and they consider him an indispensable part of the royal court almost immediately. Like he's in with the royal family. Okay. And which is impressive. Like you're going from a poor peasant on the tundra in Siberia to this, one of the most important people in the court, just because of your confidence and your luck. Or I don't know, is there something else about him? I don't know.
No.
Okay, fair enough. But so you think that Rasputin's kind of exploiting the faith?
So one of the things that happened when he's taking his pilgrimage, so he's seeing all of humanity, and he is taking notes. He's writing, I don't know what you would call it, a journal, a log. he's experiencing things. He's being put down by upper class and humiliated when he's on his pilgrimages because he's like making the choice not to bathe. And like you said, he's keeping food in his beard, so it's rotting. He smells probably. Yeah.
So he definitely smells.
Yeah, he's making like conscious like choices to stand out, and he's being humiliated. He's being robbed and mugged by thieves. Like he's having all these human experiences while he's out, and he's observing, right? And I think he's just learning people. And I think that he's utilizing what he's learning. And I think there's a little bit of like, some of this is motivated a little bit by like, you humiliated me, but look at like, I can outsmart you. I think there's a little bit of that. He gets involved with cults. So he's, or like cult type groups. So he's probably learning the power of like influence and manipulation.
Oh yeah. Dark psychology for sure. But doesn't that make him sort of like a dark wizard? I mean, isn't that
what makes him a wizard though?
I mean, I don't know, but like to understand manipulation, like I get it. So you're saying Rasputin's exploiting the faith and the spirituality and the desperation of parents to help their sick child, and maybe there's some confirmation bias. Like Rasputin said he's going to get better, and no, he's better. Like this is great. We need to keep Rasputin around. Like maybe he's a good luck charm. Maybe he's something. But immediately he's tied to the safety of their child, and that puts him in a very interesting position of power. And I think you're right. I think maybe he has, for it to be, I don't know, say 1916, and you understand how to manipulate people on the highest levels of government, and you've worked your way from literally nothing, like living in a shack on the tundra, to now you're in the palace, and you're the most important person in the Tsarina's life. Is it all just like right place, right time, or is there something? There's something about him.
So I also heard somebody's opinion about his eyes, saying that like he really played that up. Like he played into that, knowing, I guess, that his eyes had some like appearance that made them seem very like powerful or mesmerizing. So like when he would take photos, it would kind of be like intentional that he would give that look that would capture people to give him, the notoriety that he has, So I think he was more conscious of himself than probably people think, I guess, or maybe they do think that he is, but I see as somebody who was just very good at manipulation and dark, like you said, dark psychology. I think that's a good tie into that.
Well, I think that when there's two things going on, and the duality of Rasputin is something that's always interested me so much, because the royal family, well, not even the royal family, most of the family can't stand this guy. There's this peasant. He's sleeping with whoever he wants, the nobles. He's exposing himself in public. He's getting drunk everywhere. He's dirty. He's gross. Um, the the Russian population can't understand why the Tsar and the Tsarina have this person. They call him the Dark One. They think that there's almost a devil that's infiltrated because he's walking around in these robes and he looks like an evil priest, and an evil priest is one of the most scary things that you can think of. The people of Russia, they don't understand that Alexei's sick, so they don't really get the whole dynamic of why they want to keep him around. All they know is that World War I's broke out by this time. Germany is crushing Russia. Tsar Nicholas is out on the front lines now, and the person at the helm of the country is German. The Tsarina is German. And standing next to her is this person who they see as evil. So every single person wants Rasputin out. And Rasputin, kind of hearing, he's got his finger on the pulse of what's going on. He makes this prediction, or it's like a Nostradamus-like thing, where he says, if something happens to me, if a member of your family, and he's talking to the Tsarina, if a member of your family hurts me, every single one of your children will die. I mean, that's like some Nostradamus type stuff.
Well, yeah, again, it's him playing into what he already knows to be true. Mm-hmm. So he knows that he now has some power over them because he's been a savior to their son. So he's using that as a way of, like, that's my in. And now I'm going to protect myself by using my in to make sure that I stay protected, because I know that a lot of people don't want to see me here.
Absolutely. And there's rumors that he's sleeping with the Tsarina. There's rumors that, she's giving him control of the country. And so this starts to get very dangerous for everyone involved. And there's a group of nobles led by Prince Felix. And before I should even say that, so there's an attempt on Rasputin's life. I mean, this guy's the stories that are a part of him. He has an attempt on his life, an assassination attempt from the church, because the church wants Rasputin dead too, because he's embarrassing them. Like, they thought that he was this powerful spiritual leader, but he's doing, horrible things on the outside, getting drunk and partying and doing all these things. So he's attacked by a noseless prostitute hired by the Russian Orthodox Church. That he's stabbed in the stomach and he lives. And that's like a precursor to Rasputin being notably hard to kill.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that like kind of like, if you've heard of Rasputin, that's what you've heard of him?
I did not hear that.
You did not hear that.
I did not know that.
So let me tell you this. Prince Felix, who is a part of the royal family, is embarrassed. He's embarrassed for his whole family. And he devises a plan to kill Rasputin with a couple of his, noble buddies. So Felix was a known homosexual, and he offered up his wife to Rasputin. He's like, hey, come on, come hang out. You can sleep with my wife. They played to his interest. They were like, hey, look, we're going to have sweets. He loves sweets. We're going to have sex. We're going to have drugs. We're going to have booze, everything he likes. So they get all this stuff, all the booze, all the pastries, whatever it is. They poison it all with cyanide, right? So as Rasputin's waiting for his wife to come, he's eating all these snacks, he's drinking all the wine, he's drinking all this poison, and the guys are freaking out, the other nobles. They're like, why is he eating all this cyanide and just eating more cyanide? Like, why is this happening? So Rasputin continues to eat. He grows a little bit impatient. He's like, hey, what's going on here? Like, I thought your wife was going to be here and I was going to have sex with her. And Felix can't take it anymore, shoots Rasputin. Runs up, starts celebrating with the other guys. And he's like, all right, they start thinking, okay, we got to do something with this body. They go find Rasputin. They grab him, start tie him up in ropes. Rasputin opens his eyes and, quote, says, bad boy. Can you believe that? Like, I mean, this
No,
is but you can't
no.
believe it. But this
So
is the story.
I did hear, yeah. So that's the legend, right?
Right, but it goes on. They beat him. They shoot him 2 more times. They throw him in the frozen lake, and he's not dead when they throw him in, and eventually, I guess he dies.
Yeah, that's the legend.
That's the legend. So that's the story Prince Felix tells.
So
that's
the part about the cyanide that I heard, that is probably more likely, is the person who was in charge of putting the cyanide in the pastries had second thoughts and did not actually put the cyanide in the pastries. So he was eating the pastries. They didn't know that the person had second thoughts. They're all looking at him like, "What is happening?"
Yeah.
And then that's when he goes to shoot him. What takes place after that, I don't know. But like this is the thing. It's like legend shrouds this guy. So determining fact from fiction is so difficult.
It is. And there's also these rumors that MI6 agents had him killed because he was a danger. I mean, Russia and England were allies during the war. So to get rid of Rasputin would be a huge thing because, the German influence there. But listen,
so Greg, here's the thing though. Like, I understand you love lore. I understand that gives you your jollies.
It does.
And I can see how excited it makes you. But like, for the sake of our conversations, I think it's important that we also highlight the fact that like these might be total bullshit. And they most likely are. And more important thing for the sake of psychology is why are these legendary stories spread about this man? How does that benefit him? What about him made him even worthy of having this legend story that like he couldn't be killed? That's crazy.
I know. So who does benefit from that story being that way? And I suppose
definitely not the people trying to kill him.
Right. Not not the inept. What it shows is the monarchy was inept. They couldn't kill him. If the ones that couldn't kill him were befriended this dark monk, they have to sort of make him out to be, they have to demonize him in order to demonize the monarchy, which is, 3 months after this, there's a bread riot and the beginnings of the Bolshevik Revolution. So,
wait, you're saying it actually does benefit the ones intending to kill him because it gives him this like superhuman view for people who are hearing the story?
No, I think it benefits the Russian population to make the monarchy look like they are just a mess. Either because the monarchy was trying to kill him, and parts of the monarchy, the most important parts, loved him. So Rasputin was able to infiltrate the highest levels of government, and the Russian population at the time was preparing for revolution. And this is a nice story for the whole, country to get behind and say, look, you let this evil demon guy into like the interweavings of government, and he almost took over the entire country. And maybe he did. And I'll tell you what, without Rasputin, you don't have, at least not as soon, you don't have this Bolshevik revolution. You don't have communism. You don't have Stalin. So he did lead the country in a direction that is like devastating. I mean, no matter what, if the supernatural elements of the story are true or not, this man came from nothing and changed the course of history for Russia forever and made it kind of what it is today. And I think that another interesting that happened after he made that prediction, 3 months later, the beginnings of the revolution happened. The Tsar and his family they try to seek refuge in the United Kingdom because that's his cousin. They look exactly like, I think it's King George. I'm not sure, but they look exactly like their cousins, and they're denied by England. They're said, no, we can't have them here. So they're brought to a house where the revolutionaries are able to infiltrate, and the entire family is shot and bayoneted to death in a house together, like all at the same time. They pose for a picture and they're stabbed and they're shot. And Rasputin kind of predicted this. Crazy. I will say there's one more sort of legendary piece that could account, and I know you don't like to be crass on this podcast, but I don't know if you've heard this. Of course, I mean, I have to say it. It's a part of the history. It's said that Rasputin was, there's in a museum in St. Petersburg, they have his penis in a jar, and it's 11 inches long. And with that kind of, I mean, that would bring about a certain amount of confidence, I think, on some level, right? I mean, that's real. I'm not trying to be like weird. That's real, I think. I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts about this guy?
No, I guess that like to summarize, I guess where this fits into psychology is just that ability to get from nothing to everything involves like a certain level of understanding of people.
Absolutely.
You can't come from nothing and then be like hobnobbing with the wealthy if you don't understand how to get there or like how to interact with people. Like, so I think like his pilgrimages and like the way that he like learned people and learned how to interact with people, I think that he just was really good at understanding like this will make people listen. Like he reminds me of so many of these cult leaders that we talk about. It's just, yeah, he just has a way of getting people to believe him. But like, it's more than that because like people can believe anybody, but like they won't believe you if they don't actually even get a chance to hear you speak.
Well, that's the thing, Dave. It is part of dark psychology because there's another element here, the psychological element. It's the perversion of his position. So he's supposed to be this holy man, and he's under the guise of that. And we saw that with the dark psychology episode too. Priests taking advantage of that. You offer up a certain amount of trust and vulnerability. Cops, teachers. We see it. Coaches. You have this position of power, and it's exploited. And the other thing is too, for the czars, they, and this is why people sometimes stay in bad relationships too. They should have seen things for what they were, not what they wanted them to be. They thought that this guy was helping their kid, but they didn't really look at the reality. They looked at what they wanted to happen. They were, they were hopeful.
He just navigated life in a way that gave him opportunity to be able to interact with the right people. Like that's that right there in itself, to understand like who I need to speak to in order to, so like, yeah, like I said, like I was saying, anybody can be believed, but in order to like actually make that worthwhile, you have to know who you need to believe you. And he just knew. He found ways to make things happen for himself. And that's actually a skill, I guess.
Yeah. Was he a genius or was he lucky? Like, in your opinion, like was he calculated and knowing what he was doing, or did he just keep like almost like Forrest Gump, like falling into these weird positions?
I mean, it sounds to me from the stories, it sounds a little bit of both. Like if he made that prediction about the sun, and let's say by the time his message came back to leave him be and he'll be fine. What if the kid ended up dying?
Completely different story.
What if something happened while they were treating him and he did end up dying? None of this happens.
It's crazy. Yeah, like it's like a butterfly effect. Like one little instant could have changed history forever. So if Rasputin never makes it, so I guess I'll ask you this. If Rasputin never makes it into the palace, the Romanov family, is there ever communism? Is there ever revolution in Russia? Does the royal family become vulnerable enough to fall without Rasputin?
So I was actually hearing another take on this about it just being right place, right time, as far as even like the time in history that this happens. It's like right on the verge of World War I. He dies in 1914. Is that correct?
No, it must have been later. Probably 1916.
so I mean, so the war starts in 1914, right? Because it
Yes,
goes
yes,
1914 to 1918, I think.
that's right.
Um, this is like the perfect timing for all of this. So like, yeah, I just think that, I mean, who knows how Russia would have moved forward if he wasn't part of their history. It's hard to say for sure, because who knows if somebody else would have taken that spot, or someone else would have caused some kind of ripple, and which would have led to it regardless.
Well, the rest of Europe had gotten rid of the serfdom, like the serfs and the lords and all that. Russia had just started it. They had just picked up that practice. They like, oh, this is a good idea. The rest of the world is done with it. And granted, the Russia had the largest standing army, would have the largest standing army in World War One. They would have 6 million soldiers, but only 4 million of them would have guns. So it's like they're a powerful country, but their leadership is way off. And you could see Nicholas's horrible leadership just by the way he puts his own, like, granted, he loved his wife and that's great, and he loved his family, but he put the interests of himself and his family over the entire population of his country. And I don't think that's something, I think that's the cost of the honor for being in charge of a country. You don't get to put yourself first. I think that's what leadership is, right? You have to put those that you're leading first and yourself second.
Yeah.
I think that's what happens. What it's supposed to be like, I think.
Which is also why, you know, we do shorter terms, because I think the longer the term, the more likely that somebody's going to have a change in their personality, which we've talked about before. Again, with that, like what happens with when power lasts for too long.
Yeah, and like before World War One, I don't know all the specifics of it, but you have to think that it's very interesting that, so this guy, Tsar Nicholas, is the head of Russia. His cousin's the head of Great Britain. Like, so it's, the families are so powerful that they're the monarchies across Europe.
Yeah.
They're keeping their family so strong that they're just marrying into each other. There's a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of incest going, and that's why poor little Alexei.
Well, yeah, isn't that part of the reason why they were saying, like, by the fifth kid, we're dealing with like some of the medical conditions he was dealing with?
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I'm surprised that you haven't seen, and just, before we finish up, have you seen any of Rasputin in pop culture? Because I can only think of one instance. I'm sure there's more. I know there's a song.
I heard about a bunch. I hadn't actually seen them. I've drank old Rasputin beer by I think it's North Coast Brewing.
That's pretty cool. Well, you've never seen Disney's Anastasia?
No.
Oh, okay. So Rasputin's unfairly portrayed as a very evil character in that movie. I mean, he gets a bad rap, but I don't. So, all right. And then before we go, was Rasputin an evil character? Is he an evil guy?
In all honesty, I shared with you before we got on here, I like, the story didn't grab me very much, because I'm like, you made a prediction that came true, and there wasn't a whole lot that I was like, oh, I didn't have a lot of feeling about him.
Oh, see, there's something
like, I don't know. Is he bad? He's no worse than anybody else that we've talked about?
Well, you're right, but like, maybe there's something about it to me where he's just navigating this time in history and affecting things that are going to change the course of history for up until right now. And was it just because he had crazy eyes? You know what I mean? Like, there's something super interesting about this man.
Well, I'm curious if his eyes were really that crazy in real life versus just in the photographs.
I think that, like, they would have to be crazy in black and white. They had to be pretty crazy, and they were said to be like ice blue, like
ice blue. You can kind of sense that in the black and white photos. But yeah, there's something about those eyes, but I don't know what they would look like in real life. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, no, just to me, just an interesting guy, probably misunderstood. I'm just interested in, like, what his intentions were. What was he evil? I think probably not. Self-serving, sure. Maybe, like you said, on some level, trying to get back at the rich who have, always wronged him in his entire life. And maybe on some level, he is a hero for the peasants, because he eventually brought the royal family down and gave the country back to the masses, which ended up not being a great thing for them at the time, but I think it's what they wanted.
I'm not saying he has narcissistic personality disorder, but there is like a version of narcissism that comes off as someone who has good intentions, but they're mostly self-serving in some way, because the actual good intentions are like the actions that would actually make them well-intended are usually overlooked, and the actions that they do that they are trying to come off as well-intended benefit them. So for example, like the ways he's trying to help others, very self-serving, right? It all makes him look good. It gives him some kind of like notoriety or elevation in their society. The things he actually should be doing, like being a damn dad,
yeah, that's true.
staying at home with
forget
his
about
wife
that.
and
That's
all
true.
his kids, he doesn't do that at all. He goes off on these long pilgrimages to find enlightenment, which I get it. Maybe that was a thing at that time, but he's also leaving a family behind to do that. So sure, that looks like he's sacrificing everything. He's going off. He's not bathing. He's being super authentic to this. But like, you're not doing your responsibilities.
Yeah. So, but he is. So he's like, I'm trying. I'm not bathing. I'm not. I'm refraining from eating.
Why though, Greg? Why? Why is he doing
to be perceived as something?
Exactly. And I like that's him. That's
because he's still having sex. He's still doing drugs. He's still doing like he's diving into the 7 deadly sins. So he's doing all those things. So you're right. Yeah, it is all self-serving. And
everything that he's doing is self-serving.
And I guess in the end, if you're leaving your family behind, he did have one daughter. I this is just memory is like hitting me, that ended up being, her name was Maria Rasputin, which is kind of crazy. And she ended up, of course, being a lion tamer. Just some badass genes. I gotta give him that. Just badass.
Oh, I thought you were going to reflect like that he did something good.
No, I don't think that he did anything good.
Okay. I just nailed the podcast with just that last thought.
Okay. Hey, you know what? I like it. So
what is that? Is that narcissistic personality disorder? Is that just being super egocentric? What is it?
No, because I don't know if it's narcissistic personality disorder, because when I think of narcissistic personality disorder, I also think of envy and I think of insecurities. So sometimes when someone has a narcissistic personality, it's not that they think they're better than everyone, or think that maybe I would say, if anything, grandiose delusion disorder. But I think that if sometimes with narcissism, you feel very insecure and it comes off as like thinking you're better than people because you're bringing everyone else down. And that's not because you think that you're better than them. It's because you want to level the playing field. You want to bring them down a little bit so you feel a little bit better about yourself. So I think if anything, we're talking about a grandiose delusion disorder, but maybe he believed that, because things were just going his way. Everything he said kind of worked. So maybe it's like that, like Koresh or something, where you start to believe in your own legend.
Yeah. And that would be the thing that would be interesting to know. Did he believe?
Yeah.
In it?
Or is he like, I can't believe they think I'm a fucking mad monk,
Yeah.
It's super interesting. And it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, over 100 years ago, but still, I mean,
but still, I know, I heard that every single thing I listened to about Rasputin, everybody says the same thing. Like, I can't believe this was in the 1900s. I thought this was in like, I don't know. We all just have a connotation in our head, I think, of what time period he existed in. And I think it's the look. I think it's the giant beard. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I know. You put a pair of skinny jeans on him now, though. He'll fit right in.
Apparently Russia in like 14 looks like America in 1770, right?
Yeah.
They were both.
Or in 2021. I mean, with the beard and the tattered, I don't know. He is, to me, so you're not sold at all that he is kind of an interesting figure.
So flash forward, Rasputin in 2021 is he's a craft brewer and he's going to farmers markets.
I know. He's riding, he's got like Sally Jesse Raphael glasses, and he's riding a 10-speed with like one jean leg rolled up,
Yeah.
I'd
that would be him now. I'd probably like him better if that was.
Yeah. He was misplaced in time. That's all.
Sure.
Sometimes I feel that way about myself. Well, Dave, I gotta thank you for, I know this was you sort of letting me have my way with one, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate you, being on board and sitting through one and understanding that I had to get this out of my system.
Yeah, no problem. So
the next one's on you though, buddy. So whatever.
All right. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed a deep dive into the legacy of Rasputin and our takes on how that fits into psychology and how that somebody can even navigate their way through the world like he did.
Mhm.
So hopefully this kind of gives you some food for thought, and we see you sitting next to this czars at some point.
Dave, honestly, I'm sorry, I have to add one last tiny little thought. It does highlight that the way you look can completely form your personality. Like if you're super good looking, that forms your personality. If you're, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know. Is that how he got where he is, or is it just?
It's a huge part of it. Huge part of it, maybe. All right, I'll let you go. All right, fine. Whatever.
I don't know how we verify that. Like, I get what you're saying, but like, also, how do we prove that it was his look that got him where he was? Are you saying because he looked like that, they assumed he was a spiritual person?
I think that his eyes.
Is that verified though?
No, I'm just saying. I think that plays a huge.
Is that your opinion, or is that like
that's my opinion?
Things that are people are saying about.
That's my opinion.
Okay,
that's my opinion.
All right.
So you're saying, so it's wrong.
I'm yeah. No, I'm just saying, like, how do we know that that's the reason?
No, we don't. But I think I
get what you're saying, but I bet his personality had more to do with it than his look. Like he could look like a piece of shit, like he did, and still not get to where he got if his personality sucks.
Hey, listen, think about Dorian Gray. His personality changed because he was the way he looked. Think about like a beautiful woman. If her personality is different, the world treats her different. The navigating her life is different based on the way she looks. If something happens and she's like horribly disfigured or whatever, her personality and her life is going to be completely, her opportunities, everything's going to be completely different based solely on the way she looks. So I think that's definitely a factor.
And on that uplifting note, for everyone who's not super good looking, we apologize.
Yeah, that hey, listen, that we fit into that category. So, sadly, we must try.
All right. Nice. Well, I guess there was some food for thought. Thank you, Greg, for squeezing that tidbit in. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back next week with a new topic. And, as always, like, I think we haven't said this in a few weeks, but if you guys have topics you want to hear, definitely, send them our way. We are always open to some listener requests. And, we've gotten some of our best material has been listener requests. So we appreciate it when you do that. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you have a great night. See you later.